I visit our farms up in Washington for the mint yield every single year. And we see what the best yield is, we see what the best flavor is, and it's not consistent year to year, which becomes one of the hardest things to get flavor right when it's not artificial. But I know for a fact that it's like, all right, this is the best yield of mints from this year. Let's use this flavor and, see how it fits into our pieces.
Welcome to the Startup CPG Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. It's Kent Yoshimura. He is the co-founder of Neuro, which is the brand that brings energy and functional ingredients to gum and mints. Yup, that's right, chewable energy. So Neuro went from just an idea to a viral sensation. They were on Shark Tank. They built a huge direct-to-consumer presence and Amazon following. They're now scaling in retail in one of the most competitive categories out there, check lane, gum, mints, all of that stuff. And they're also competing with the energy category. They're doing it with science, loyal super fans, and some huge cultural moments along the way that you're going to hear about. So today on the podcast, we dig into their early traction, the science and consumer psychology that makes people choose their energy, how they've built partnerships with athletes and major creators, and Kent's learnings along the way. You are going to love this episode. All right, here we go. Let's get into it. All right, Kent, welcome to the show. So to kick things off, could you just give us a quick intro of yourself and Neuro?
Yeah, I'm Kent Yoshimura, the co-founder and CEO of Neuro Gum and Mints. We launched about 10 years ago because we wanted to see how we can make supplements more accessible and approachable.
All right, and tell me about the rest of your team.
So, our team is growing pretty rapidly. I guess we're about 70-something people now. But, we have a killer chief commercial officer that used to work at Hue, Conagra before that. Megan, who is our integrated brand manager, worked at Claire's, was a VP there. And then my co-founder, Ryan, who I've been on this very long journey with, who leads partnerships now. And I don't know if you see on Instagram and LinkedIn, but we have some pretty cool partners. We just announced Andrew Schultz today, actually, as part of our professional athlete roster. So that's our latest partner.
Cool. All right. Okay. And Ryan, I saw on the Shark Tank episode with you. And
that's right.
Yes, it was you guys did such a good job. Honestly, when I watched that, I think the thing that I like the best about it is your guys' friendship. Even at the end, you guys gave each other a hug and you're like, I love you, man.
Oh, dude, don't. And it's a very pervasive thing across the entire business where we have our principles and everything too, like every other company, but at the end of the day, someone said this best, where it's our authenticity and how genuine we are through the brand comes from that core. Where Ryan and I started this because we were friends. I was sleeping on his couch, and we had this idea, and it's how do we keep developing that into something more? And now we're this real business,
Well, it's really beautiful, and it just seems like you guys really support each other very nicely, and that is an incredible thing to have in this rough CPG road. So, okay, getting back to Shark Tank. In 2020, you went on Shark Tank. The Sharks passed on the opportunity. Robert said he was he thought the valuation was too high. He actually gave you an offer at a $7 million valuation, but he was like, $2 million. I just can't get there. It's, too rich. But, your numbers were awesome. You were at $3 million in revenue. You had doubled versus the year prior. I don't know your exact margins, but in my head, it sort of sounded like you were at 60% margins or something awesome. And then you were asking for $750K because you were going to grow into retail and, had a bunch of marketing things that you wanted to do. So they passed. Catch us up. What happened from then to now? Did the Sharks make a mistake? Where's the business today?
Oh, man, it's so crazy. The whole Kevin Leary stinky poo-poo thing went viral, which is hilarious. But yeah, I think we're doing around 3.5 that year, and just continue to more or less, double or double plus since then. And the business continues to grow. E-commerce is our strong suit, but retail has always been the next frontier. How do we activate it properly? How do we get an understanding where our consumers shop and enter into the right markets initially? And it's crazy because we now have one of the Sharks as our advisor, and there's going to be a big announcement whenever that is going to show up online. But it's a cool little redemption arc for doors are never closed until you actually close them. And our team's grown. We moved our entire business over to Vegas after things shut down during COVID in California, and we continue to make strides across the online space as well as the physical retail space.
And where are you guys at on revenue now?
We are approaching, I guess it's 9 figures. Yeah.
9 figures. Okay. So Robert, Mr. Wonderful, didn't like that valuation when a business was at 10 million with 3 million in sales. Now you're over 100 million in sales, and now one of them decided to come back and be an advisor. So I'll be excited to hear who it is. And then later, when we do the next round of this podcast, you can tell me what all those discussions were like and if they liked the taste of the crow that they were eating afterwards.
That's right. I'm not sure if information is embargoed on that front yet, because it's there's all these contracts and things flying in place.
I love it. But I mean, as somebody who roots for brands, what better outcome or story is there than somebody who went on there? And I mean, I'm sure you got a lot out of the appearance. You guys represented yourselves incredibly well and the product, and, didn't get a deal, but looked amazing doing it. And I'm sure everybody supported you, and your sales probably went crazy from that. But what better outcome than like, aha, look, you were wrong. Look how well they're doing. So I love that. I'm really excited for you, and just congrats to you guys for everything that you have achieved. Now, can we just dive into the product as well? So you guys sent me an incredible sample pack here. So I've got all of the Neuro Gum flavors. I've got all of the mint flavors. I was chewing on some of this. Man, I had a long day today. I was recording a webinar and an interview. And so I was just crunching on this gum, which is tasty and fun. And you're like aware when you're chewing it, like, oh, this is helping me be very alert. So really cool stuff. But can you just take me back to, like, how did you get the idea for energy gum and mints and everything? How did that all come to life?
Yeah, I mean, energy gum existed before in the form of things like military energy gum or Jolt, like way back in the day, where they try to take this energy drink model and place it into a confectionery format. And when I was training, I used to be more or less a professional athlete. I was fighting in Thailand since I was like 15. Like, martial arts has been a big part of my life. I was training with the judo Olympic team. So I was traveling out to Japan, staying in the dorms out in like the top colleges out there, training like all summer. And when you're training at that level, 1, you get tested, but 2, you don't want to be taking energy drinks or all these substances that people were taking, like the gym rats were taking about 15 plus years ago. And I got into the world of nootropics because, like everyone else during that time, I was reading Tim Ferriss books, and this was the thing that was helping him for becoming a serial entrepreneur. So in my dorm room, I started buying supplements on my own, mixing them, seeing how they do with my body while I was performing at my highest level, and realized that there's this combination that's pretty straightforward, but natural caffeine and L-theanine, which you find in green tea, but amplified a little bit, has a very positive effect on cognitive performance. So when Ryan got in his snowboarding injury, he used to be captain of his cross-country and track team, one of the fastest kids in California, but he got injured in a snowboarding accident that left him paralyzed from the waist down. I provided him with these supplements, and it worked amazingly for him to get back into school, get going on what he wanted to do. And after college, he wanted to go get scuba certified, because that was the one thing that, would allow him to be active despite his injury. And these pills were great on our trip, but we realized that it could be more shareable, portable, and look a little bit better and less stigmatized if we're not carrying a bag of pills around in public. So we set out on this journey, launched our product, beat our goal in 3 days on Indiegogo for our initial funding. I was packing everything, out of my apartment with our now CEO, Tyler, and really the rest is history. And our mantra really now is, how do we continue to make supplements more approachable, accessible, a part of your lifestyle, more so than something that sits in your medicine cabinet that is collecting dust or you typically tend to forget about.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And it just was reminding me about NoDoz. If you ever had that, that was a thing that we knew about that in high school. They were just basically caffeine pills.
It's caffeine pills. It's like 200 milligrams of caffeine. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was a lot. I remember taking that to stay up and study, but I probably didn't study. I was not a good student. I probably just took it and then played video games. But I mean, yeah, I wouldn't call that the most accessible format because it does. Yeah, it feels like you're straight up taking a drug, and like it's just kind of like a weird, like, oh, I'm gonna take these like pills. I don't know, but oh, like gum? Okay. Yeah, that's much more accessible. That's something I'm much more used to doing recreationally. And let me ask you something else, which is interesting to me because, okay, take something like Celsius, right? Which obviously just has brought so many people into the energy drink category. Like I was living in LA at the time and just seeing like how many, 20 to 30-year-old females were walking around the Equinox with a Celsius can, like as if it was an accessory. And I'm like, whoa, this is pretty interesting. And these are not people who would say even that they're like energy drink drinkers. They're just like, no, but I drink the Celsius. That's like a different thing. But part of it, I think Celsius is just so like flavor forward. It's a very strong, fruity flavor. I feel like there is something about flavor that gives people energy, not just like straight up the caffeine that is in it and all that stuff, but there's just something about flavor that gives people energy. And so obviously with the gum, as opposed to something like pills, like you get the functionality, you get the caffeine, but there's also flavor that's coming in. Do you feel like that is true? Like there's just something about flavor and like a flavorful experience that can energize people?
Oh, definitely. Like, I mean, even if you think about like Vicks, like the nasal whatever things that just blast you with the menthol. I mean, there is something to be said about sensory experiences and how they transform how you view the world within that moment. So when you're chewing gum, one, you're activating your brain, just from the act of chewing, but being able to have that like minty freshness and it's funny because we talk about the 5 gums or all these other Wrigley products from back in the day, and they lean so much on what that experiential moment with flavor was to try to prove out all these extra benefits that gum would have for you. And now we're actually just doing it with the ingredients inside our products.
It's so interesting, and your flavor holds also. That's like the least cool thing about a gum is if you have a gum and after maybe it's like old or whatever, and then you put it in and it's flavorful, and then a minute later you're like, oh, the flavor went away. Now I'm just chewing literal gum. This kind of sucks. So yeah, but yeah, the flavor part of it is just so important. It's so interesting to think about. Hey, can you tell me how gum is made?
Yeah. So it's typically there's different types of gum bases that you could get. A lot of gum bases that are used contain things like BHT, which is very bad for you, and microplastics. So we try to move away from that, and we have a proprietary way we develop our gum base. But most people use heat extraction or heat extrusion to basically heat up the gum, put in all the ingredients like the flavors and whatever you have, and then it cools down. And that's why you get your stick of gum that lasts for, well, like 30 seconds and then it gets super hard because it just is going through this chemical process. For us, we're slamming everything in with pressure using a process called cold compression so that's why you get like the longevity of the flavor, the longevity of the gum chew and the texture. And even with the mintiness, like I visit our farms up in Washington for the mint yield every single year, and we see what the best yield is, we see what the best flavor is, and it's not consistent year to year, which becomes one of the hardest things to get flavor right when it's not artificial. But I know for a fact that it's like, all right, this is the best yield of mints from this year. Let's use this flavor and see how it fits into our pieces.
And it can be very different. Different kind of mints can add such a different
It's crazy.
end
Yeah.
product. Yeah, there's so many different kinds of mint.
It's like a sommelier level. Like when you go up there and they know all the different mints, it's like, wow.
Yeah, ones that like open up your palate more, ones that kind of are like more of like a spearmint. Yes, that's really
They have
interesting to
like
me.
chocolate mints and all the stuff too. It's like the dirt and I don't know. It's all science, like food science that I don't really understand. I trust them.
All right, let me ask you a childish question, which is if you had to pick a gum that you love other than yours that was around in your childhood to just gorge on, irrespective of any health impacts or quality things, which would it be? Because I remember so many of them fondly from my youth, like Juicy Fruit, Big League Chew. I could never get into Big Red. I don't know, it's too spicy
Yeah,
for
I'm
me.
not a big red guy, but I have this like really fond memory of going to Toys R Us, rest in peace, and getting the zebra gum. Do you remember that? Like
Oh,
it
was
was
it
like
layered or was it just a
it wasn't
stick that
like
was striped?
it was like a stick pack, but it was like it had like a zebra on it. I don't even know what it's called, but it was like the zebra gum. It tasted kind of like juicy fruit, and it was so good. And I just remembered having like really fond 25-cent gum pack memories of that gum. And I don't find it anywhere anymore. But that I would say is like the core memory of mine.
Okay, some service provider out there who really wants Kent's business, go find that on eBay and send it to him, and he will give you a meeting for sure. Um, I also remember buying those like 20 packs, the like real like the double mint or whatever, like the really tall one that just single stack like 20. You walk around with one of those, you're the most popular person at the party, just handing out sticks like that left and right. Gum it's just such a fun and social thing too, because unlike a lot of snacks or foods, or it's just so shareable with people, and it's a like sit on your desk or in your car cup holder kind of product that's just like out there and really just part of our social structure to like that's something that you share with people. And if you have it, like some people carry mints and just love offering people mints.
It's somewhat like, I mean, you're talking about high school. It's like transactional in high school. It's like a form of currency.
Yeah. Well, I know. I guess it is in prison also, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like cigarettes and gum, like you can trade that for just about anything. All right. I don't know from personal experience, but I've seen the movies. Okay, so coming back to you and your product, the reason for the podcast. One question that I have for you is like, who is the core consumer? Like, who have you found is the most open to chewing their energy?
So it's really interesting because there's like this 24 to 35-year-old demographic, which is, I guess, my demographic, that definitely not on the 24 side, but on the older side of that spectrum, that has been so health conscious, but looking for new innovative ways to get functional food. And I think, you and I, like within the CPG world, has been through kind of that renaissance of what we saw, where it's like, how do we put function into like existing formats? So we've been able to tap into that market. Obviously, with TikTok, we got a younger demographic, but funny enough, with TikTok, although there's a Gen Z audience that's there, we get this older demographic of 55 and over that is more attracted to our product and converts better on that platform. So our hypothesis is that when people see a Red Bull or a Monster or even Celsius with like 240 milligrams plus of caffeine, there's like, if I'm like 60 years old, I'm just assuming, but it's like, if I'm 60 years old, I don't need to be a monster or a rock star. I don't need to have like the Red Bull running through me, but something as like balanced as a Neuro Gum for them to be able to get through their day makes a lot more sense. And I think the communication, the messaging, the positioning that we do to that audience and our, I guess, entire audience space just resonates a lot better.
So let me ask you this though, but my guess would be that they chew your gum for a different reason than the younger people. The younger people maybe more for the energy aspect, and the older people, maybe they're really focused on cognitive health for the long run. Like they want to stay sharp. Is that possible?
100%. And it's funny because like, if you in CVS, to, I guess, shout some retail numbers out, the first half of this year, we don't have data for second half this year yet, but first half of this year, we outsold 5-Hour Energy and Alani Nu combined in unit sales and revenue sales. So it says a lot about like the audience that goes, when we're in the pharmacy section especially, the audience that goes to a CVS is looking for something like a Prevagen, but then finds a product like ours, realizes the price point is so much more accessible to them while also getting them cognitive benefits, and then they end up buying that versus, say, like the energy drink departments and going necessarily to those options.
So it's so interesting to me. And I mean, to be at the scale that you're at with such a heavy direct to consumer presence, I'm sure you just know this inside and out, and specifically which messaging works on which kind of people. I wonder if do you know about how people use your product? Like, when are they chewing it? Like, do they have rituals around that? Or is it like sporadic and impulse, or, how often, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, our power users are chewing this like 5+ times a day, which is pretty crazy. It's like it's like a consistent work thing for them, almost in the same way that they would use, I would assume, like a Zen, where it's like a habit that they've developed throughout the day, when they need to just microdose on energy. Um, Funny enough, we try to do the messaging of like replace your morning coffee, but breaking habits down like that as a product like ours is not necessarily the most effective, which is interesting. So it's not necessarily replacing energy, it's incrementally adding an energy option to their day that doesn't blast them through the roof.
And I feel like that's been the case with most successful energy brands coming out the last few years. I don't know how many of them are just stealing share from something else that was out there versus bringing a lot of new habits and new people. Like we were talking about Celsius, I really feel like so many of those people are new to the energy category. They were not like ripping Monsters before they started drinking Celsius. They were like, just part of this like hustle culture and, working hard. And, I talk about this a lot, but like, cause I mean, I worked in energy for a long time. Like it just seemed really like, especially okay, there's hustle culture and yeah, really things like Shark Tank and all of the success of startups that like everyone kind of has something going. They're trying to work harder, do cool stuff. Pandemic hits, everybody's at home all of a sudden, and now they have to still work hard and maybe even harder than before because they are not commuting. They just kind of start working earlier, but also take care of their kids and make lunch at home and do all this other stuff that still also hustle. And now they're not as healthy and they need to work out more and they overall maybe just need more energy. But I think like overall, I think you would just see people's caffeine intake, and I don't know the numbers on this, having gone up drastically over the last few years. Like still doing that morning coffee. Again, there's pretty much nothing in the world that could get me to break my morning coffee, but I am open to other stuff later in the day. And now I've added in some supplements that sometimes have energy to try to, get the most out of the workout. And I pay attention to what some of the experts say about it, about, kind of permissible levels of things, but also the like, from what I read, I'm not a doctor or an expert, but it seemed like overall, some people recommend like up to 400 milligrams per day of caffeine. Some people say you can go, kind of higher than that. Probably it's more of a like feeling thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't go more than 400. And what's crazy is like I say the same to it all the time, but if you get a venti Starbucks, which is the largest, like there might be a larger size now, but the large size Starbucks coffee is 400 milligrams of caffeine. And it's like,
Damn, I didn't realize that
if you're
had that.
starting your day off with that, of course you're like burning out your adenosine glands. You're burning out all those things that are supposed to give you natural energy, and you have to keep it going. So we're not advocates for that, obviously, and we always use the term microdosing energy inside our company. But it's like, how can we find a balanced approach when you're constantly, like getting your attention span taken in different directions, and providing us a better focus?
And so one stick of your gum has 40 milligrams of natural caffeine that comes from green coffee bean extract. So like like an 8-ounce coffee might
It's like
have
80 milligrams.
80. So it's like half of a kind of, not venti cup of coffee, but half of I think
Yeah,
they
yeah.
call that a
It's like an
tall.
espresso.
Yeah. Okay. And so you could chew on that. You can definitely like, 5 a day would be up at 200, which is kind of half that max level that we talk about. Although, people have different tolerances, of course, but that's an interesting number to think about. It's funny. I just remember like when I was one of my first jobs, I had a friend who said his dad, who's like an epic lawyer, had almost no vices. Like he didn't drink, he didn't do smoke, he didn't do any drugs, but he just drank the hell out of coffee. And he would just drink, like just be chugging ventis like all day. And so he ended up in the hospital for some, problem. I think, I don't know if it was like a stroke or I don't know. But when he woke up, he was like going into convulsions because of caffeine withdrawal, because he was so high on caffeine that they had to go and get him coffee to like normalize him. So anyways, I always just remember that. But the way that caffeine works, you will know better than me. I was just always really bad at, biology and stuff like that. But my general understanding is that like caffeine, what it does is it basically interrupts the uptake of energy stuff like in your brain, the way that works. And so like it's not like changing something systemically, it's just probably like delaying that reuptake, which maybe means you're gonna get tired like later, but it can like give you that energy so you don't have that, reuptake now, so it'll sustain you for longer. But like I don't know. Maybe there's some impact later in the day, like when it's time to be tired, you might get more tired, something like that. Is that right? Is that way off?
Um, yeah. I mean, there's often an equal reaction to anything you do, in your body, and there's different ways of doing it. So you could obviously take less amounts at specific moments during the day. So there's obviously our wake and sleep cycle throughout the day, and as you're waking up, the worst thing that you could do first thing in the morning is chug a cup of coffee because your body's naturally trying to get out of its sleep cycle and go into its awake cycle. So a lot of people from the very beginning of the day are adding immense amounts of stress to their body by like forcing it to wake up when the body's natural process is to ease its way in, and then you can maybe take your caffeine to prolong the effects of wakefulness.
Well, this uh, kind of uncomfortable look I'm giving you is because that's what I do.
That's what most people do, though. Yeah,
That's how I get myself out of bed. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go to Starbucks and have a breakfast sandwich and a coffee. And also it like really keeps you regular, if you know what I mean, like
it
coffee.
does. It does, and it becomes routine. It becomes habit. And I think that's why, like, to the earlier point, it's hard to break people's rituals away from them, but there are better methods around how you could dose caffeine, how it could be effective as like a performance enhancer for you, so that you don't get tired, at like 3 p.m. or get that afternoon slump.
It's definitely part of my ritual. I actually like so much so that I made a health change at the beginning of this year because I was in like horrible shape before. I was like, all right, New Year resolution. I'm only drinking coffee black because I was going to Starbucks like twice a day and getting this like oat milk thing that had like some sugar in it too. And probably just doing that, like if you drink two of those a day, I mean, they really add up. So probably that was like 400 calories a day I took out of my diet just by switching to black. But I do love the taste of black
And all
coffee.
the
I'm
money
so
you
like,
save too. It's like Starbucks is pretty expensive. I went like last month and it was like $7 for one of those.
yes, I was just in Vegas for supply side, and I think it was like $9 for a grande cold brew. All right, guys, congratulations. Um, they've got that new CEO. I think he's doing well. Um, okay, so speaking of supply side, pretty interesting to be there. Supply side, which is really heavily focused on supplements in general, and you see a lot of the trends that are happening there. And like, yeah, Neuro is making supplements in a more accessible, approachable format. What do you see going on overall in that supplements and functional department? Any predictions on where things are headed?
Yeah, I mean, I just wrote an article on this, funny enough, as like a guest writer for a magazine. But I don't think novel ingredients are gonna be as popular running into the future. Like people have an understanding of like what works for them and like where it fits into their day versus looking for the new miracle pill, like outside of GLP-1s, obviously, like the new miracle pill that's gonna promise them to relieve stress or give them energy or whatever it happens to be. And when you look at like I'm there's protein in everything now. I think that's like it's almost like a meme at this point. But there are things and creatine as well, which has been around for like 20 plus years. It's like, what are these things that have been effective, but we haven't found the full potential of them yet, including caffeine and L-theanine as a combination, which we use? And how do we apply that into different moments in our day versus finding that the new miracle supplement that they're going to spend all this money on to force it into your day? So, I go to supply side. I was only there for like maybe an hour. This most recent one, but I it seems like the entire industry is moving towards that as well. Like you got the ashwagandha and KSM's doing their like new shilajit or whatever. They're trying to push some new thing, but outside of that, like everyone I saw was still existing ingredients that are healthy for you, but how are you reformatting it in a way that applies to your consumer?
Like magnesium lotion for kids.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example. Or fish oil, but from kelp, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting to think about because I mean, yeah, I definitely feel like they're just new. Like, okay, creatine, yeah, which has been around forever, and it was that kind of stuff that was, yeah, like only the gym bros used it when we were in high school, and we were all kind of afraid of it. And I remember that South Park episode where Cartman just starts taking a bunch of it, but I don't think he's working out, and he just keeps going, beefcake. It's a great episode. And like, what is it? But like this year, I started taking creatine, and just, I don't know. Honestly, I'm not that good at science, but for me, it feels like it is actually pretty effective. Like I've gotten a lot stronger because of it. I don't think I could feel cognitive effects of it, which I know are like people are talking about more now.
Yeah, but you had to take like 20, 25 grams of it, which is an insane amount.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know about that stuff, but yeah, I mean, I see like, yeah, just people talking about that stuff in new ways. Yeah, pretty interesting to see how it'll all make its way into, food and beverage
Do
versus
you see all
how
the
much kind
creatine
of like,
drinks at Supply Side West this year? I feel like they're everywhere.
yeah, that stuff is pretty interesting to me too, because creatine, if you like, you can look at these charts about ingredients and their 4-year CAGR that are included in, food and beverage kind of stuff, and like the penetration of it in different categories. Creatine's very underpenetrated compared to other ingredients that I hear about at that level. Like it's, it's not, the stuff that it's in is not that like lists creatine as ingredient has not yet grown like crazy. It's not in so much stuff, but it is talked about a lot by influencers that, like a lot of TikTok hashtags on it. And a lot of people that I know are taking it, but they're taking it in supplement form. They're not necessarily like, I know it's coming in cereals and all this other stuff, but also there's kind of this like low limit for your daily recommended amount of it. Unless we're talking about that like cognitive side where it's like, yeah, you could just have this in a clear, tasteless form in the morning and just put it in whatever. You don't necessarily, you don't need to like, you don't need to go buy like a Gatorade with creatine in it or whatever. Cause like, it's not, like, from what I understand, it's not helpful to have like more and more creatine every day. You just like hit that low amount and that's what you need and you're good. Unlike protein where everyone's like, I just need more. I need it in everything. I need it in the air that I breathe now. Like I need to have as much protein as possible.
Yeah, it's like, I wonder if like companies are realizing outside of the creatine gummies where you have to take like an insane amount of them because of the load size, that's the limiting factor on gummies. It's like, how much incremental revenue can you really make by adding creatine to your product? And, is it worth switching people over to that? The cereal, I saw on like, I forgot where it was. It was like CPG Wire or something, but it's like
Man
$20 a
cereal.
box. It's
Yeah.
so expensive for what it is. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to spend $20 a box if like one scoop of creatine for me is like 6 cents, for my daily intake.
Yeah, I don't know, but I really am not an expert on this stuff, but it is interesting, and I will look forward to your upcoming creatine gum launch. Um, so, okay, very interesting. Anyways, obviously that's all just kind of broader supplement stuff, but I mean, just for me in general, I see such heat coming in overall supplements. I just feel like there's so much more awareness, so much more interest from people in adding things into their routine, which to me does feel like, really incremental. But I guess we'll see where all of that stuff lands going forward. So, Ken, one thing I wanted to ask you, because I know very little about e-commerce, honestly, in that Shark Tank pitch from 2020, you were talking about 20 to 30% repeat rates on Amazon and your website, like people coming back to purchase, which I think is actually very good. Although it sounds like you're like, wait, what about the other people? Almost like in baseball, if you hit like 20, 30% of the time, that's really good. Can you just explain for maybe other people who are at my low level of knowledge about this, what does that really mean? What is a good benchmark for something like that?
Yeah, I think it's like while the 20-30% repeat customer rate is good, the way we look at it is how are we building like brand advocacy as a whole, and how are people who take our product, like how can we calculate back into them from an LTV to CAC ratio model as we continue to scale the business? So, this is something that every ecom company says, but there's different calculations for it. What is the payback period on the amount you're spending, and how much are you willing to invest to make sure that customer, until that customer pays themselves back on that initial acquisition?
Okay, so just to baseline that for everyone, like LTV, lifetime value of a customer, CAC, which is your customer acquisition cost. Basically, like you want LTV to be as high as possible, which means that when you get a consumer, they are coming back and purchasing you a bunch of times. And it also has to do with how much they actually buy. And then the customer acquisition cost is the cost of your marketing to actually get them to come and make a purchase. So you're basically like the math has to work out, whatever it is, whatever your repeat rate is, whatever your average order value is, and people coming back and how much they buy and how often they buy and everything. It just has to make sense for you overall as a kind of growth model.
Yeah. But with that being said, like as the company's matured over the last 5 years, a lot of our focus has gone into new customer acquisition as a whole, beyond just LTV. So while the repeat customer rate is a good metric to go by, we actually, when it's too high, we know there's something wrong because it means we're not getting enough new customers. And the majority of our revenue is being built by just retargeting and retention. So, and I'm sure you read like how brands grow, but the biggest thing that they talk about on the majority of big brands being able to grow is incrementally building new customer acquisition through different channels by creating availability and creating a level of positioning that allows them to go to where your product is available. So for us, TikTok was one of those, PR was always one of those, media appearances. We still do obviously a lot of Facebook ads and things like that, but these last few years have been focused on how do we maximize availability for consumers that we're targeting so that we could get them at least once and then continue to grow our business that way. And then we could always retarget them as long as our brand equity continues to grow.
So, speaking of getting your product to be more available, I wanted to ask you about retail in a second, but just because at the level that you're at, you are one of the D2C Amazon kings that, certainly of people that we've had on this podcast achieving the most success in that. Do you have any tips for early stage brands that are hoping to get on that same journey as Neuro, like stuff that you really like, really cool tactical stuff or strategy that you think might be interesting for brands to know about?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people fall into the trap of giving all their money away to Facebook, Meta, Amazon. I think there's like some crazy stat, like 80% of money being raised by VCs just end up back in those three companies. And for us, there's always like, how do you have more novel ways of making sure your brand equity stands out wherever you are? So that could be, as simple as getting PR out into the world and educating consumers in like specific niche demographics that a product like yours exists, all the way to I guess pushing for Shark Tank, getting partners that are aligned with your vision so you can get that initial pop. And from there, how do you leverage that brand equity you built through someone that already has equity or a credibility source that has equity to continue amplifying your brand? And it's I don't know if that's like a direct answer on a tactical perspective, but it's something we've been able to leverage well to say, hey, Neuro, as this new product that requires education in a new format, is taking over an already existing category of goods that have a similar effect, but doing it in a better way. And now, I'm going to keep quoting books, but in Crossing the Chasm, right? Like that's how you start crossing the chasm for a lot of these people, getting them away from different resources, getting them away from different categories and associating them more so with your brand itself.
Yeah, I like that advice. I do wonder if everybody would have as much success with it as you had. Because it seems like that definitely was the right strategy for you, and you hit some things that probably drove tons of awareness with new segments of consumers that wouldn't have found out about you through other mediums. But just, I think the brand that you've built and the like use cases you're talking about are very interesting to people. So that kind of PR stuff, I feel like would be especially helpful. I'm thinking, but there also are probably plenty of brands where like you're not going to get PR hits. What you're doing is not so novel and interesting, and you might just waste all the money on PR that you could have used just to acquire customers.
I know, I totally agree. I think PR could go many different directions. We experienced that before because there's no like purely, there's no like attributable revenue directly to a PR hit, right? But at the end of the day, it's like it goes so many different ways because I've also spoken on another podcast about is the main goal at the very beginning in getting exposure as much as possible, and then you focus on bottom of funnel stuff later, and if you could be, which is marketing 101, I know, but it's like if you could be top of mind for the majority of customers in whatever way it is. By For us, it was like we dominated on TikTok, and that was our big top of funnel push over these last few years. Prior to that, it was media and the PR stuff we were just talking about. How are you then breaking down all the attributes of your product and positioning and the messaging and retargeting them in the right way so that you at least hit them on what they want when they want it? And that takes somewhat of a science. And, for Facebook and a lot of these platforms, it's all algorithmically done for you. But there are ways to be able to target people at very specific moments as long as your positioning is on target, is hitting them at that exact moment.
It's always a bit of a dilemma. I think the thing that I hate seeing is like, I feel like for new founders, you've come up with this product and you're like, I need to get PR because everyone in the world, of course, is going to want to write about this. And when they do, everyone's going to want to buy it because this idea is so incredible. And I mean, honestly, most of the time, we're like, all right, calm down. Like this,
Yeah, you're number like 38 on a list of 50 on BuzzFeed. Yeah.
yeah. And like, even if that happens, what does it? I feel like your product is well suited to that. People are going to find it intriguing and then they're probably going to want to try it. I don't think that's true about every product. I hope that people are honest with themselves or can try to be, because the PR person, like maybe they will be, but maybe they're just like, okay, great, pay my retainer, I'll get some hits. And like, they don't really know if it's going to sell through or what the impact is going to be for the business. So, and then, you can also get plenty of awareness, but if it doesn't lead to sales, you may have a tough time raising money when you run out of that, those funds. So anyways, good for everyone to keep that stuff in mind, but obviously it worked extremely well for you guys.
On a more boring front, like the way we operate our business from just an annual operating plan, like system, is what are the tempo moments that we could hit on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis, which if you're an Amazon business, Prime Day is a pretty big day for you. So what are the plans that you're doing to activate around very specific moments throughout the year where you're going to get amplified exposure and spend and people are in that shopping moment that you're really tapping into that mindset? So I do think from just like a pure business perspective, it's like, how are you planning against big activations throughout the year and really building your firepower for those times versus what I see a lot of, like, and I did this myself, everything feels important at the very beginning. And you feel like you need to do everything to get the exposure, to get all these audiences. But there are moments when people will buy, and that is your opportunity to really start building at least one cohort that could expand into so much more through whatever activations that you do.
And that, I mean, you guys are getting to be a big brand, so it makes sense that you're thinking about it that way. I feel like that is how the pros do it. Like I worked at Mars Chocolate, that had M&Ms, and they would have, you'd have your kind of yearly calendar left to right, and then the big occasions like back to school, like Halloween, all that stuff, and then the big campaigns that were going to hit around them that needed to be reflected in everything that you're doing. You need to have the big commercial going on TV. You need to have your promotions lined up. You need to have your in-store displays that are going to hit around that time. But really, like specific campaigns, I feel like you see the really sophisticated marketers do it that way. Obviously, hard to do that as a small brand where you're just really even trying to like get a promotion to actually happen and be planned. But that's
You're like the only person doing it. Yeah.
that's very good that you guys are thinking about it that way. That sounds really smart to build up those moments for you. So, so now I know, like, still you guys like just so much of your revenue and growth comes from online and TikTok and all that stuff. But I know you're also making big strides in retail. What has that been like for you? What are the learnings for you on that end? What are your goals? How do you think about it?
Man, like, so you probably see with our packaging, I'm going to criticize ourselves right now, but we're going through like a big branding exercise that is launching pretty soon. But our colors on our box are associated with our flavor. So you can imagine the scalability of that once you start expanding into more and more functions becomes impossible. Like, it's going to get so convoluted. So something you don't have to necessarily worry about when you have like an entire educational funnel and a flow on D2C. But when you're going into retail, the consumer needs to understand exactly what they're getting the second they see your product on the shelf. And having to, I guess, reapproach the way we're doing the way we're activating on shelf, especially when we're not a household name yet, although we're getting there, is a pretty critical piece of how we had to rethink everything from a marketing perspective, a brand perspective, messaging perspective.
That is interesting. People who know a lot more about marketing than I do, which is most people, I'm not a big marketing expert, have said to me at times like, yeah, it's hard for you to own a lot of colors as a brand. That can be really difficult to even own more than like 3 colors for people to associate all those with your brand. But then you also see now some brands doing that, though. If you look at Poppy, for example, that really has a lot more colors, and that is kind of what defines them. And I mean, I agree with you about the colors and matching and stuff. And I mean, even like Orbit gum, right? You have the like pink one that's like, kind of more like bubble gumish flavor, and then like the green one, the mint. So, but I can see what you're talking about, because you guys do have multiple product lines. You have the gum, the mint, and you have different sizes and formats, and you have the pouch, and you have the stick packs.
Like, I think with Poppy, it's a little bit easier because they could lean on their brand marks a little bit, and they have such strong brand blocks that they could own, even with all those colors, that that it's flavor oriented. Because it's not like one drink is for energy and focus, and one drink is for probiotics or whatever it happens to be. So, and I mean, they do like Poppy. I know Chris Hall and Steven Ellsworth super well, but they're like a master class. And how do we own that shelf by dominating with the loudest colors possible, versus someone like us would be, how do we get our Neuro Blue as a brand block to stand out altogether in like a school of fish mentality way?
Yeah. And it's not but yeah, again, it's not like they don't have different things that they have to communicate aside from the flavor. And you do, because you've got your calm and clarity neuro mints, you've got your sleep and recharge mints, and then you have energy and focus mints. So it's not just about the flavor, it's also about the functionality that's different. And you really have to like kind of read the label to understand all those. So I know that that is a challenge, and also can be like when you're demoing product and you're trying to hit people with the like 2-second line about what it is, like you're like, no, I need like a second to explain all these different things to you. So I know how that goes. Okay, so I guess, yeah, and speaking of that retail, because I worked at Mars, and Mars Wrigley, they have all the gum space also, but like checkout, I was always really interested in just how competitive and expensive checkout is. This is something that probably is not so familiar for brands that aren't in checkout, but like that in checkout, when you negotiate your annual plan with a retailer, there might be a percentage of spend that you just have to give them for checkout space, because they know they can sell that to a lot of people who are very interested in the high turns you can get from that part of the store. So what's it been like going and negotiating for that space? And also, the big boys, the big CPG legacy companies don't love people coming on their turf and taking share away. And, a lot of like very aggressive salespeople trying to hold on to their bonuses there. Just what's that whole thing been like, trying to get that space? It's been really competitive. How have people reacted?
Yeah, I mean, we try to negotiate slotting fees into like ad fees. So being able to like, hey, we'll spend this much instead of like the slotting fees to make sure we retain our space. But at the same time, we went to I'm trying to remember what the retailer was, but we got Cash Lane there, and we were doing 11 units per week per store, which is pretty freaking healthy. Like even at checkout, and we still got kicked out after 3 months.
Somebody paid them a lot of money for that space. And it might have been a corporate initiative. They might have even had like a bonus. They might have been bonused on kicking you out, like whoever that sales rep was that managed to buy that space off you.
Isn't that crazy? So like, there's definitely some mafia like undertones within the checkout space, but thankfully when we are with a lot of the other partners that we have, like the convenience stores and things like that, we I feel like it's less maybe they're a little less aggressive because the the cash register checkout lane is a lot wider, a lot bigger. But once you get into grocery, I feel like it's just like a vicious space, which is funny because like that's not even where people really shop for gum, like in general.
Oh, interesting that you say that. I feel those are like my memories of buying gum are always being like with my parents, at least as a kid, because a lot of, I mean, maybe NeuroGum isn't obviously as much of a kid product, but at least when I was buying, like, yeah, go with my, you know, babysitter or my mom or something at the grocery store and like, oh, can I have some gum?
It is the perfect impulse section. I mean, but I think it's changed. Do you know Julia Adams? Which she used to work at Mars Wrigley also.
I don't know, but they do. I'm not sure, but they do have like 70,000 employees.
That's true. Yeah, fair. She was on the marketing side, but she's an advisor of ours, and one of the things that she was talking about is like the biggest change that Mars Wrigley did that increased their revenues was just making their gum pack bigger. So instead of like a 5-pack, they made like a 24-pack. And so it's all about like how much space can you really start taking up in that impulse set, and then pushing other people out to minimize their presence as much as possible.
Yeah, that's what they say. If you can't beat them, buy their space, kick them out, right?
Space, first of all.
Okay, so you guys have a lot going in your favor. I also, I remember seeing a clip of Joe Rogan talking about Neuro Gum, right? Like this must have been an ad that got served up to me even, but it was like him sitting with Neuro Gum on his table during a podcast and talking about it. He's like, I don't know, I just have this and it gives me much more like energy or clarity or something, and I can do my job better. I can do better on my podcasts and stuff. Is that how did that must have been a huge moment for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, so Shark Tank happened, and then a few weeks later, Joe Rogan happened. So, we were just seeding a bunch of people product, and I think we seeded Joe Rogan around like 2018 or something. We had no idea he was taking the product, and then out of nowhere, he started talking about it. And since that moment, he's probably mentioned us like 40 something times, just naturally, organically, and it's it's that's probably one of the most impactful things that's obviously ever happened to our business.
That's amazing. Although it kind of makes me wonder how I can chew gum and podcast at the same time, because I feel like I don't think anyone wants to hear me smacking around gum while I'm doing the audio here. My microphone, I think, is too good, but he obviously has quite a big audience. So I guess he knows how to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny though, because everything reaches a saturation point, and even with like the Joe Rogan, like I think he mentioned us last week again, and we didn't see a pop or anything.
Okay. Well, what about, like, I know you work with a lot of other people out there in that community, and athletes and DJs, creators, all that. What's your strategy around all that?
I mean, a lot of it is like, so we have our brand pillars, and how do any of these people overlap with our brand pillars while also building an incremental audience against that? So similar to what I was saying earlier, how do you get that core audience and then be able to cross the chasm just a little bit for certain parts of that cohort or that maybe taking other energy products and guiding them into your funnel. So with Steve Aoki, for example, we know the nightlife scene, the DJ scene is a bunch of people that want to stay up all night. So how do we position ourselves with him on a performance basis, but as people start taking it, they transfer it into their lifestyle habits? With Yuki Tsunoda, from a credibility standpoint, there's only 20 F1 drivers in the world, and that's like one of the most intensive sports for focus. So how do we gather that audience, apply really that positioning that he has to all of our, and then drive incremental revenue growth?
It's funny because at Supply Side, I was visiting a booth of another company that does cognitive claims on stuff, and they had an F1 simulator and like a data point, like based off F1 drivers, their performance per lap increased by 0.3 seconds or something, which I mean would be substantial actually if you're a driver. Like you take any clicks of a
For
second.
you or me, it doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, but I guess people do associate that with just like the highest levels of concentration and mental acuity.
Exactly. And like everything is just a credibility game, and how do you leverage that credibility game into whoever you're messaging to? Like, we don't expect them to be F1 drivers, or we're not expecting to target drivers necessarily, but how do you back things into your brand messaging that you want to promote?
It's a funny thing. Like I've thought about caffeine, especially, and like why people take it and what is the thing that they're like hoping to feel more from. And like, even I used to ask people who were drinking a Red Bull, like, hey, why do you drink that? And they're like, for oomph, like, energy. And then I would ask them like, okay, what in there do you think gives you the energy? And actually, a lot of them didn't even really know it had caffeine in it. They're just like, I don't know, like sugar. Um, but yeah, the reason why people take that stuff is pretty interesting. And then also, like, how do you really verbalize the thing that they're trying to get to? And I feel like it's just this like mental clarity. Like they want to be more like themselves and less groggy and just more capable of like how they usually are, and just not feel bad at all. What do you think?
I mean, so what's funny is like we used to put 40 milligrams of caffeine more forward on our packaging, especially like if you go to like a Casey's, where like people are definitely going to be more conscious about the caffeine amount that's in our products. And it was just a hypothesis that we wanted to test. We realized that no one knows exactly how much caffeine that they're taking across any of the products they take, but they know exactly how it makes them feel. So exactly to your point, it's like if as long as we could be energy and focus forward and we have everything else backing that, like whether it's like the media activations that similar to what Red Bull does, or the claims that we have from like the scientific studies, that usually pushes 80% of people towards trying our product more so than, hey, this is just it's a better it's a better deal than taking Jet Alert or No Dose.
It's so interesting. And by the way, there's some products out there that have a lot of caffeine in them that you really don't know about. Like if those BAI
Yeah,
infused
it
drinks or
has
whatever.
caffeine.
Take it. Okay, so it doesn't have it. Nobody sue me for this. I don't think on the front it says anything. I don't believe it says on the front anything about caffeine. It just says like super antioxidant infusion or something like that. Guess how much caffeine is in one of those bottles?
What, that has caffeine?
Just guess.
Like 120 milligrams.
Okay, it's 80, which that's a full cup of coffee. But like, my sister would buy those for her kid. I was like, what? I don't think I know. I think. Did you look at the back
Well,
of
do you
that?
remember
It's
the
like,
whole like a Panera Bread lemonade scandal?
yeah.
Like that was crazy.
It's wild. It's a wild world out there, and it's like, oh, I feel like really good from this and this infusion. Like, that's caffeine. There's a lot.
Yeah, it's caffeine. It's
It's
caffeine.
a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Or even like Excedrin. Excedrin has like 20 milligrams of caffeine per pill. Like that's what's helping your migraine go away most of the time.
Even just knowing that makes me feel like it'll work better. All right, yes, let's get some of that. Let's do it. Let's get this headache gone. Okay, so just as we're wrapping up here, Kent, I just want to ask. I'm very excited for you in this journey. How like I think just because like you guys just seem like such good guys. If you watch, like, everyone go watch the Shark Tank and just see like how lovely Kent and Ryan are as people. Like, you just seem like some of the nicest people, honestly, in this industry. Which so I don't know if I feel like you're going to answer this question just really humbly, but I just want to know what does it feel like to like from when you were that person pitching on Shark Tank, or even just in the early days before it was going that well, to now at the point where you're running $100 million brand. Like, what does that really feel like when you stop and think about it?
No, I mean, the hardest part is to stop and think about it. Um, like, cause it's funny because, a lot of the conversations I have with early team members are always around how it's like the culture has remained, but everyone feels like we've gotten like more professional now. Like that's the word. They're like, wow, we're so professional now with everything that we do. And I guess as I look back on Ryan and I's journey, through all this, it's having an understanding for us that we don't know everything, as startup founders, and there's people that are way more experienced than us, and to be kind of honest about that, I think has helped us more than anything, and not really taking that fake it till you make it route that a lot of people tell you to do. So, I don't know. There's still so many things I don't know, and I lean on so many of my teammates for that have way more experience than me, and it's awesome to not only like feel myself and the team leveling up, but um, really seeing, I guess, the company as a whole, like adjusting to each other and leveling up in different ways. And no, it's surreal. A lot of luck, obviously, as well.
I like that answer a lot. It's a beautiful answer, and it wouldn't be the same for everybody. I think there are some people who should fake it till they make it. Like if they that might work for them. I feel like that very open, thoughtful, honest model works. That's because that's who you are, and that like works really well for you. I just think it also ties back into this like really understand yourself and your strengths and how you like can leverage those. And that may be like, I don't know, I'm like a big energy, positive, hype kind of guy. And that's kind of like that's like a thing that I really try to lean into. And I feel like has really like helped me to grow the things that I've been trying to grow. Everyone has like their style and their strategy. And I feel like a lot of life is learning how to really lean into that and, use it in a really authentic way. All right. I'm going to close us out here, Kent, but I really want to thank you for coming on the podcast. I have really enjoyed this discussion and learned a lot. And do you mind, just as we close out here, what's a great way for everybody to support Neuro and follow along with you guys in your journey?
Yeah, find us on Instagram and TikTok at Neuro Gum, NEUROGUM. And you see us in stores, make sure you buy us so we can get our velocities up.
That's right. All right. Find them in that checkout space. It cost them some money, so make sure you get in there. All right, cool. All right. Thank you so much, Kent. I look forward to having you back in the future and we can hear more about this retail journey that you guys are now on as well. All right. Thanks a lot. Hope everyone enjoyed. Bye, everyone. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If you loved it, I would so appreciate it if you could leave us a review. You could do it right now. If you're an Apple Podcasts, you can scroll to the bottom of our Startup CPG Podcast page and click on Write a Review. Leave your company name in there. I will try to read it out. If you're in Spotify, you can click on About and then the star rating icon. If you are a service provider that would like to appear on the Startup CPG Podcast, you can email us at partnerships@startupcpg.com. Lastly, if you found yourself grooving along to the music, it is my band. You can visit our website and listen to more. It is superfantastics.com. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.